the idea of this discussion, which is really to be a discussion. We want to have our panelists talk, but we also want the whole audience, all of you, to share your questions and also your experiences from the Latin America Caribbean region. And what do we mean by Latin America Caribbean? Well, I just want to clarify, Latin America and Caribbean are extremely broad, diverse regions. They have several countries in them. I think Latin America has over 20 countries by itself, Caribbean, many more. There's also multiple languages. So when we say that you're going to learn a little bit about Latin America and Caribbean, you're really going to kind of get an idea of a very small microscopic portion of Latin America and Caribbean. Think of it as kind of a nice sample to get you started in your journey. And we hope that this forum will be a springboard maybe for some of us to start to educate ourselves more about the unique opportunities to study, volunteer, or intern in the Latin America region. It's personally one of my favorite regions. It's not as traditional as some other places. I think that when I first thought about studying in Latin America and in Mexico and Chile, I had some preconceived notions about the accessibility for blind people, like me. I had some preconceived notions about my ability to be successful in that region, and they were all completely wrong. So I hope that maybe we might dispel some misconceptions here, and also just kind of help people realize that Latin America is a very rich, exciting place to think about if you're looking for a place that is to intern or study. And so to start with, but you will be getting a very small microscopic sample. So to start with, why don't we go ahead and I'm going to ask Sergio, our first panelist, this first question. And Sergio Teliznik, he actually came to the US a while back to study, get his master's degree, and now he's back in his home country of, where are you from, Sergio?
Hi, Justin. So I'm from the city of Cordoba, right in the middle of Argentina, down south in South America.
And he's got his started working at his job for about a year now with a U.S. company working from Cordoba, Argentina. Sergio, could you tell us maybe about? It sounds like you are from Cordoba. Maybe you could tell us about kind of generally, tell us about your country, and also if there's any other countries in this region that you've lived in.
Sure. So I lived 30 years in my hometown, Cordoba. I visited some of Argentina. I visited some other Latin. I only visited Brazil and Colombia, so I know those countries as well, but as a tourist, not living. And I found some similarities regarding accessibility. So I don't know where you would like me to talk from.
So I'm sorry, you said that you, how much time did you say you spent in Brazil and Colombia?
Just as a tourist, just like
tourist,
2 weeks
yeah.
or something.
Okay, great. And so also, could you share too, you mentioned about similar accessibility, briefly maybe for blind people, I guess, who maybe can't see you, but tell us about your disability maybe.
Sure. So I have a spinal cord injury, cervical. So I'm a quadriplegic. But I don't know how to say it in English, but it's when you have your your hands and your feet compromised, but not completely. So it's not like I cannot move anything of my hands. I can move them, but not as well as a paraplegic. Yet it's still classified as a quadriplegic. So I'm a wheelchair user, and I need some assistance every once in a while. I need a wheelchair accessible bathroom, ramps. So I'm pretty keen on all that.
Thanks, Sergio. And anybody who wants to know, Sergio is, when he studied in the US, he actually became an expert on bringing personal care attendants to the United States. And so I hope you'll get a chance. We got to do a great webinar with him. And I believe if you were in the Europe forum, Abigail Lehner was also on that webinar, so take a look at that. But thank you, Sergio. And why don't we go ahead to our other panelist here, Alice Butcher. Alice, maybe just kind of share again, a little bit about what is your disability, and tell us about the country that you went to and spent over 2 years. And unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sure. So I have mild cerebral palsy. It affects my speech, my face, the right side of my face, and the right side of my body. So, I speak with a I have a speech impediment, and I have like a little bit of a, I call it a swagger to my walk. So I'm not, I have like a gait when I walk, but oh, and I also have ADD. I have attention deficit disorder, which is a from my cerebral palsy as well. So I was in the Peace Corps in Jamaica, and I was there for 2.5 years, and I actually taught literacy to kids who have special needs as well. So I taught kids with disabilities how to read. I spent the better half of a year trying to write a grant to get them iPads for the school because they didn't have any technology. So at the end of my service, I was able to get them one iPad so that they could use it for educational purposes and for going online and working on the internet and stuff like that. So, but what I really took away from my experience in Jamaica was, before that I had always gone to European countries. I had only traveled to European countries, and I feel as though people in America and people in Europe, they, not that they're afraid of my disability, but they're just kind of worried to ask questions about my disability and why I speak differently and why I walk differently. But what was so refreshing was that in Jamaica, everyone would, they would just ask me flat out why I talked weird or why I walked weird, and I actually embraced it. I really liked how people were very forward about what their questions were, and I was happy to explain, you know, that this is how I was born, and I can't help the way that I walk or talk. And it was very refreshing, I thought, as opposed to being in America or Europe where people kind of shy away from asking the one question. So, yeah.
I remember in your thank you for sharing that, Alice. And yeah, I remember in your blog, like you mentioned, people kind of knew you as the girl with the red backpack.
Yeah, well, that was another thing, because I had gone into a car accident while I was there, and I messed up my right shoulder, so I wasn't able to carry a backpack. So when I did my grocery shopping, I was only permitted to carry a bag with wheels. So I had to carry a suitcase that I had brought over with all my clothes to put my groceries in it. So everyone in my town referred to me as the girl with the red bag, because you know, be walking through these muddy streets and dirt streets with a red suitcase, and so, you know, my gait makes me stand out with my disability, but just having the red bag on top of my gait, on top of my speech impediment, was like, I kind of thought of it as like a big red sign and be like, this
Yeah.
kid has a disability. So it's like, oh great, like another, like a whole other thing they have to like pile on. But I had to carry that bag around for about 2 months, and I was like, I was like, could my disability be any more prominent? I mean, this was,
Yeah.
like a big red flashing sign. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a great blog, folks. If you have get a chance to read it, I think I don't know, maybe you could share that with us after, and we could forward that to people, Alice. And I don't think we've had a chance yet to feature you on our website, though. Just as a comment too, if anybody wants to add to anything that you're hearing the panelists say, please chat Joey Lenny. Also, if you have a question that you would like me to, or you just like to ask yourself for that matter, please chat Joey Lenny. Yeah, and I've actually heard some names of people logging on. My screen reader has tipped me off, and I think I actually heard one name that I actually spoke to a couple years ago, and I'm pretty sure that you have some knowledge of part of this region. So if you would like to speak up, please do. And so Sergio, why don't you tell us, it's, you know, Alice kind of talked a little about her disability experience and kind of how people reacted to her disability, and kind of how she managed and got around Jamaica. Maybe you could share us from your experience in Argentina. Tell us about maybe just like the disability culture. What's it like for a person with a disability like you? The laws also, and maybe just some comment too about how people, how the attitudes sort of are, or the ideas around disability.
Sure. So, you know, Argentina is a developing country, and that basically means that you have a big diversity of cultures and attitudes towards disability and levels of accessibility. So you can find the whole spectrum. Okay. Let's start maybe with the people. You can find almost every attitude that you can think about regarding disability. You know, I mean, I'm always a positive person, so I'm going to tell you that there's plenty of people that have an absolute positive, proactive attitude towards disability. You know, so when they see a person with a disability, they don't make such a big deal. They are ready to help you whenever you need. I must say, like, I like to compare the US with Argentina because those are the two countries that I lived in. In Argentina, people are not so afraid of helping people with disabilities. You know, there's a big thing in the United States with liability. You know, people are scared of helping you because they are afraid of hurting you. And if they hurt you, they are afraid you might sue them. That doesn't exist in Argentina at all. Okay, if a person doesn't want to help you, it's not because of liability. That doesn't exist here at all. That's not in people's minds here. So I believe that there might be like more chances of getting help down here in Argentina compared with the United States, because in the United States, some people are kind of scared of helping you. I have seen that while living in the US, and I wouldn't even say that they are mean. They're just afraid. So sometimes I would explain them, like I would repeat the word over and over. You're not gonna hurt me. Don't worry. You're not gonna hurt me. Yeah, I just need this. You won't hurt me. So when I said you won't hurt me, they will like relax. So in Argentina, I don't even need to say that. Of course, I'm assuming that, you know,
What kinds of things do you get help from?
Well, like for example, being on a wheelchair, if there's a problem with the accessibility, I would need some help. And that takes me to the second subject, which is the physical accessibility. So in Argentina, there's not as much as accessibility as you would expect in the United States. the United States, it's an amazing place regarding accessibility. At least that's my experience, and that's the experience that I've heard from other people with disabilities from Argentina going to the United States. Here in Argentina, you do have, well, I can talk for my disability. You know, I'm a wheelchair user, so regarding ramps and space where you can go through with your wheelchair and wheelchair accessible bathrooms, you will find those. You just won't find them as much as you find them in the United States. So certain places you're more likely to find all sorts of accessibility, such as public spaces, such as public, like maybe malls. Malls are extremely accessible. Public buildings are pretty much accessible. Universities, you know, school institutions are usually pretty accessible. Not as much as in the United States. I must say that. You cannot expect the same level of accessibility. So the best advice that I would give a person coming from the US to Argentina is try to think ahead as much as you can. Try to talk to people that live down there as much as you can before going. So just to make sure that you have what you need. Okay, so if you go if you want to go to a university, I would strongly advise to contact in advance the university just to make sure. And if they tell you that there are ramps, okay, can you please describe me those ramps? Because sometimes they might say that they have ramps, but all of a sudden they are not the proper inclination.
Sometimes they're narrow or pretty steep or things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes they would say, and they wouldn't say that just to be mean or lie to you, just because they think that it's okay, and it's not okay because they are not experts. And we do have an accessibility law here in Argentina, which is amazing. It's just not as well as applied as the Americans with Disabilities Act in the United States. So you really cannot expect everything to be perfectly accessible. And the best advice that I can give you is just try to think ahead, contact people beforehand, and you should be fine.
Sergio, do you use a power chair?
No, I do not.
And so like, yeah, so like, I just think one of the things what you were saying, I mean, it just kind of makes me think about how like when Americans, quote unquote, you know, I know that we're all American, but you know, the people from the United States want to study abroad, especially like people with physical disabilities who use wheelchairs, they experience anxiety. They're so used to just kind of being able to sort of get everywhere, get into restaurants, get in, and you know, if you find a restaurant that's not accessible, well, that's pretty rare and pretty unfortunate. It's frustrating, and then usually you'll just go somewhere else that is accessible. And I think people can kind of feel uncomfortable with the idea of like, I don't know, asking a pedestrian, asking somebody, hey, can you lift me up the step? Or, you know, can you, I don't know, even like help me use the toilet. And we actually had a former staff member who has written various blogs for us at our website. Megan Smith is her name. And she's talked about experiences of carrying a bottle with her in case of no accessible restroom, or having people help her, you know, hoist her on the toilet, or having people lift her upstairs. I mean, do you have any kind of thoughts about that from any, I don't know if you've had any experience like that in your home country?
Absolutely. I mean, that's just part of living down here. You need to be double ready. And I can understand that it can be frustrating for a lot of people, and it can also be discouraging, but the best thing that I can say is, the will to do the experience has to be stronger than that frustration. So it is possible to come to a Latin American country and have an amazing experience. It's just going to take a little bit more effort compared with just going to a regular, you know, university, maybe in the US, where you know that you have a disability office that is going to help you with everything. You will have to take care of more things, and you know that if you go out on a Saturday night, well, there will be a lot of restaurants that are not going to be wheelchair accessible. You might have problems with the bathroom. I think that in the end, it's all about, you know, overcoming all these challenges, because if not, like the only alternative is to stay at home. And man, I'm not doing that. I mean, I'm going out one way or the other. So it's just a
Yeah.
matter of taking it proactively and taking it as a challenge and showing yourself that you can actually do it. And you know, Argentina is such a beautiful country that, and Latin America in general. And so I think that it's worth it. Of course, it's not the ideal situation. Of course, it has to change. There are a lot of institutions that are working to have that change. And there has been a lot of change in the past 20 years or maybe 15, which I've been involved with the world of disability. So there's definitely an improvement, but until we get to that point where you know, everything is as accessible as it should be, we need to be strong and we need to overcome these challenges on our own.
Mm. Thanks, Sergio. Actually, yeah, I mean, I think when I got to travel to your country a couple times a few years back, and I just remember people in Chile and Argentina and Mexico where I've been, they just have this very sort of non-judgmental way about help. And I remember, well, I don't remember, but I sort of remember that blind people in the 1970s in the United States protested heavily against airline requirements that we take attendants with us. And, you know, and I feel like it was partly because of this discomfort with that maybe Americans have with helping. And for me, in the United States, when I would travel in airports, I would just expect to take myself to the next gate because it just was really demeaning to accept help in the United States. And in here, I'm traveling in Uruguay and Argentina, and I'm just moving from one flight to the next. You know, people are just, it's like clockwork. And when I was in Chile, I was very surprised too, at the university, how easy it was to get people to read to me. And so that was really a positive.
And
Anybody?
let me, if
Yeah.
you, there's something that I've been thinking about, and if there's one advice that I can give to anyone coming to Latin American countries, try as hard as you can to get in touch with a person that lives in a place that you're going. Like in this case, if anyone hearing is coming to Argentina, you can definitely talk to me. But if you're going to another country, you should try to find a person with, you know, related with disability that already lives there, and they're going to be able to help you. And I'm pretty sure that nobody will have a problem. And listen, I have done that. You know, when I went to Brazil, I got in touch with some guys that play wheelchair rugby in Brazil. And when I went to Colombia, I did exactly the same. So, and they were so helpful. You know, everyone is so willing to give you advice regarding what to do, where to go, where to avoid going. So that's a very important advice that I would like to give.
When I traveled in Buenos Aires, I stayed for a few days with a really cool gay male couple, and every day at the morning he would go over with me kind of what I was going to do that day. I'd tell him the places I wanted to see, and he'd basically tell me, you take this bus, you walk this way, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that was really helpful. I mean, Alice, you know, Sergio's saying that kind of one way to prepare for going to a country is by getting in touch with people and sort of looking for resources in the country. I mean, did you do that did you get to do that at all in Jamaica? Or I know your experience was a little different because I think with Peace Corps, there's a little bit more support maybe.
Yeah.
Any thoughts though about how somebody might do that in Jamaica?
I mean, there's
or anywhere else?
something, because I mean, you know, apart from Jamaica, I have actually traveled a lot by myself. I think I'm I think I'm up to 20 countries by myself right now. And I've actually gone off what you were saying, Sergio. I've been in last November. I went to Colombia by myself. I went to Cartagena, and I first of all, I loved it. It was absolutely gorgeous. And second of all, I definitely felt, you know, the warmth of people, and they're so helpful and caring for someone who has a disability. And I mean, I'm fine. You know, I don't really have anything motor-wise going on with me, and I walk, I run, I work out every day. I'm very like flexible, I'm very strong, but you know, people do do kind of look at me at my gait, my side gait, and they, you know, most people kind of not back off, but they kind of just like, you know, inhale a bit more when they see that I have that disability. But in Cartagena, I just met the most wonderful people, and they were just so kind and so accepting and so nice and so friendly and wanted to talk with me. And yeah, so I really enjoyed Colombia. But yeah, I mean, I would like to go down to South America again. And then, like I said, I feel like in Jamaica, they'll ask you straight out about your disability, and they'll even give you like nicknames about your disability, but it's not.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not in like a taunting
Yeah.
manner. It's just like a matter of fact. Like, I know, like, a lot of people in Jamaica, well, many people in Jamaica have diabetes, and a lot of people, and because of the diabetes, a lot of people have amputations, unfortunately. So, you know, so people will refer to a person with amputee as one knee or one leg, or, you know, or one knee, like, because he has one arm. But it's not in it's not in a matter of jest. It's not in a matter of
Right.
making fun of them. It's just a matter of distinction. And
Right.
you know, I mean, I didn't have that kind of a nickname, but I had the nickname Peace Corps Girl, because it just all knew that I was in the Peace Corps. But you know, I thought that it was really cool that like the people aren't afraid to kind of pinpoint you out for having your disability. Like, they do that, but it's again not in the matter of jest. It's not in the matter of making fun. It's just in the matter of distinction, which I think that in America, I think that we're very, like, we tiptoe around the matter so much, and we're in such
Right.
defense because we don't want to offend people with a disability. And sometimes I'm like, and that's why I like Jamaica, because I was just like, say it to my face. I mean, I don't mean to sound cross, but I'm just like, I know that I have a disability. You're not hiding anything from saying it bluntly. I wish that America would be more upfront about discussing your disability, as opposed to kind of just forcing it down.
Yeah. Right.
Until when it comes up in like a big conversation, because it's like,
Right.
that's a part of who I
Right.
am, and you can't disguise
Right.
that part of who I am.
Yeah.
Me, like, I'm not my disability, but my disability is a part of me.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, does anybody, just as a note for anybody, if you, yeah, if you're having trouble seeing the interpreter when you're in gallery mode, you might see a bunch of blank boxes. If you just click over one of the blank boxes where there's 3 dots, you can bring up a menu, and I believe there's an option to hide non-video participants. Also, to access captions, click the CC button or click the link in the chat box to open the caption stream. And also, Joey, Lenny, do you see any questions or comments?
Hi, Justin. No, there's no questions yet, but I actually would like to share my own experience.
Please do.
For a minute. So I studied abroad in Europe, actually, but I was born in Dominican Republic. And so I have personal experience living in the Caribbean, in another country. And I can say that a lot of what the panelists have shared already does resonate across the board for Latin countries. It is really about preparing. I would definitely highlight to try and speak to a local about how accessibility is like for them. I know that when I went to Dominican Republic, after not visiting for about 11 years, one of the things that I learned was that it's really about interdependence in Latin countries, because since the environment can tend to be not as accessible as here in the US, it becomes easier to just be okay with asking for help or depending on someone else to help in certain areas. For example, one of the things that I did when I was visiting Dominican Republic was go to one of the monuments that was really close to my home in DR, and it was a little hard for me to maneuver my wheelchair. I use a manual wheelchair to get around, and so I usually am very independent in terms of moving around, but I noticed that at that point, I needed some help. So I asked my family members to support me in that way. And I mean, apart from taking away, I guess, the independence that I was used to, I had a lot of fun just visiting a lot of the touristy places, I guess you can call them, in my country. So it definitely resonates a lot of what the panelists have been saying.
Thanks, Joey Lenny. Yeah, your comment about interdependence actually kind of makes me think about a couple years ago, I was listening to a leader in the National Federation of the Blind speaking about a mission that they had done to Barbados to bring cane skills to blind people in Barbados, basically going to developing countries. It was a project that went to developing countries to teach independent travel skills to blind people. And the leader described meeting this woman in Barbados who was totally blind, and she was also a senator, and a national senator for Barbados, and she had never walked to work independently because she didn't have enough travel skills, and so they worked with her. And this man described how when this woman's coworkers saw her coming to the Senate building, and they just said, "Is that you?" Like, they were surprised to see her. But I think what I took from that story was you had this woman who effectively didn't have travel skills, and yet despite not having travel skills, she was able to become a senator. And so I think, like Joey Lenny said, it's kind of sometimes people can get like, I feel like in the United States, we sometimes equate more independence with being able to get into the professional workforce and a lot of other sort of larger participation in society issues. And yet I'm hearing these stories of people like that woman in Barbados who kind of did it the other way around. And if anybody has any questions or comments to add, welcome to chat those to Joey Lenny, or request that we unmute you. You can also sign your questions. We have about 5 minutes left. So let's see, maybe what I would just say, ask or open up to our panelists. And we're sure the panelists would like to hear from you, says Joey Lenny. I agree. Just kind of opening the floor up, and asking, what is one thing that would kind of attract somebody to sort of the country that you're talking about? What would make somebody, what does Argentina offer for people with and without disabilities, or what does Jamaica offer? Like, any thoughts, or maybe you could kind of tie this in with like what was what's been sort of a high moment for you in your country?
I mean, honestly, like I said before, I think what I really took from it was getting a whole new perspective on my disability and on how it can be looked at. Because for my entire life before I went to Jamaica. Again, my disability was talked about, but it was talked about in whispers, you know, and I was whispered about on the streets. And I mean, not on the streets, but like I was whispered about. It wasn't, things weren't said directly to my face. Like a face is either pulled, looking in my direction, or people are whispering.
People are very quiet about talking about it.
Yeah, exactly. They're very like, they don't say it to your face. And I mean, I don't want to get defensive, but I kind of said, I've been saying my entire life, just say it to my face, and we can get over that hurdle. We can get over this. Do I see something? Do I not see something? How's that going to look? Am I going to come off as rude? Like, I feel like Americans and Europeans, they have this kind of inner battle with themselves about how to approach it. Whereas in the Caribbean, in Jamaica, they're just like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, well, what's wrong with you? You got a disability. Is that okay? Like, yeah, that's cool. And then that's it. Like, that's, you move on. You start, like, that subject is talked about, it's done, and then you go on talking about your day, and you talk about a completely different subject. But the fact that the subject of disability has been hit upon, discussed briefly, and then you talk about something completely different, it just makes me, as a person with a disability, breathe a sigh of relief. Yeah. You know, just like, okay, that part's done.
Yeah.
Now we can
that makes sense.
Be friends, or I can buy something off of you. Like, that part's done. But I think that in America and in Europe, everyone's kind of holding their breath.
Yeah. But that's a great point. Yeah, it sounds like you kind of felt like people kind of were not afraid to see your disability. I mean, yeah, definitely in our countries, we sort of have these culturally prescribed ways that we're supposed to respond, you know, with apologies and sympathy and so forth. And it sounds like people didn't really follow that cue card as much. They weren't as confined to that cue card in Jamaica. Yeah. Could you, Sergio, what do you think? You know, I mean, I can definitely talk. I can definitely speak your country's praises, but why don't you share?
Well, you know, I love my country. I love Argentina. It's an amazing country, and as I said before, it's definitely worth it. You know, all these few things that you need to take care about if you come and you have a physical disability. It's definitely worth it because, like, it's an amazing place to come and visit. I can talk for hours about it. Like, you have everything. If you wanna come to study, you have great universities, and if you wanna come just for fun, we also have everything. So it's really, you know, we are known worldwide for our soccer, for our barbecues, for our wine, but we have that and we have more than that. So I really think that, and you know, the people are really warm-hearted. I always say that you're gonna find all sorts of people everywhere. Like what you guys were talking about, people in the United States. I personally had a very good experience, but I think that it always depends on what exact people you end up meeting, and there's a lot of chance in that. You know, I was lucky to find a lot of people that I didn't feel any kind of problem. I think I only had like one bad experience living in the United States regarding my disability itself. And you might have that in Argentina, but that doesn't tell you anything about the country, because there are so many warm-hearted people here that you just need to move on whenever you find that sort of situation. The point is, the country is definitely worth it. Latin America is definitely worth it. You'll just need to work a little bit more regarding, you know, going through the hurdles of accessibility, but you know, it's definitely doable, and you won't regret the extra time you dedicate to it.
The only risk is wanting to stay, folks.
Yep. That's the biggest problem that people that come down here have. And you know, I must say this. Most people like they really like the nightlife of
Oh,
Argentina.
yeah, yeah.
It lasted until 5 a.m. in the morning or 6. So if you like that, then you'll have a problem leaving this country.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you, Sergio. Thank you, Alice. Thanks everybody for joining us for this session. Joey, Lenny, just in case you see any more anything in the chat.
Hi, Justin. No, I don't see anything in the chat right now, but I'd like to invite whoever has joined us today to turn on their video and wave goodbye. We'd love to see some faces and just know with us if you want to.
Turn on your cameras and wave, everybody.
Yeah, pretty much. But thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. And enjoy the rest of the conference.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.